Coming up, a short duration burn.
Followed by a long duration burn.
And an old burn for Mercury.
I don't even know what that means. And then this one is gonna do an interview with a miniature Stoge. Stay tuned. Tomorrow begins right now.
And welcome to Tomorrow. I'm your host, Carrie Ann Higginbotham, and this episode is 8:15 for May 9th, 2015, unless you are our guest that I will be interviewing soon, in which case it is May 10th. You're welcome. First of all, though, I want to make sure I give a huge shout out to our Patreon Premier members who have donated $10 or above to this particular show. I don't know why you do it, but I appreciate that you do, and I love the idea that you actually support us in all of this shenanigans. In any case, I want to get right into our guest, which is Lisa Stojanovski, also known as Mini Stoge in our chat room, and I believe Lisa Stoge, is that correct, on Twitter?
Yes, that's right.
Yay, I got it right. Okay, good. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but a few people might be asking why on earth we're interviewing you, as you have such an unusual name, Higginbotham, so I would have remembered that name, Lisa Stojanovski. That seems like a name I would remember. I can't quite place it. Why on earth are you talking to this woman? So I will tell you why we are talking to her, because she's one of those few people who've decided to be one of the victims of tomorrow and has given some time out of her life to bring us space pods, which are very, very cool. If you're not familiar, this is the Tomorrow live weekly show that we do, live and weekly. And space pods are these really cool kind of short form videos that you can get throughout the week. So if you need a little bit more tomorrow, you can always have a space pod. And Lisa is one of those wonderful people who does one of the space pods. So we figured, why not get to know Lisa a little bit better? Why is she doing these things? Why is she donating all of her time and all of the, time that I'm sure you don't have in any way, shape, or form to do this for people you basically don't know? So, Lisa, hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good. So, let's start a little bit further back. Who are you? What do you do? How did you find tomorrow? All of those things. Ready, go.
Okay, so I live in Sydney, Australia, and I'm a scientist, and I love space. I've loved space since I was a kid, and I guess it all began for me last year. I haven't been watching you guys for too long, so I found you through a friend of a friend of mine.
Nice.
Oh, it's always that way, isn't it?
Yeah, word of mouth. That's awesome.
But yeah, so since I was a kid, I love space, and then I actually got picked to be in the Australian International Space School, and from there, that was in 2010, and from there I went to space school in Houston, Texas.
Nice.
And after that, I actually went and watched Atlantis take off on STS-135, and that's kind of the peak of my space journey so far. And then I found you guys. So.
Very cool. We were there too. I don't know if you know, but we were totally
wow.
there. Yeah, so that's awesome. So our paths have actually crossed before and we just didn't even know it.
Oh, that's weird.
Also, of note, I want to say I did a little bit of research because I know about you for the most part, and I'm sure most of our I was going to say readers, listeners, watchers, all of our citizens, thank you. All of our citizens of tomorrow know about you are through the space pods that you do. And so I figured I would watch all of them. I just binge watched them really quickly just to make sure that I got all of the information I possibly could have. And I wrote down some very crude notes. And so one of them, of course, was why space. I wanted to talk about the lab, your really awesome t-shirts that you wear in all of the space pods, and the pictures of Robonaut. And you have succinctly, in about 30 seconds, answered the majority of those questions. So this is going to be very interesting. Okay, so you liked space since you were a little girl, and then you became a scientist. In your scientist realm, do you do anything with space?
Sort of. I'm trying to make my science fit into space, if you
Nice.
will. I look at hibernation in mice, which is kind of weird, but then in a way I want to try and maybe see if I can make humans use hibernation as well, because if humans had the ability to hibernate, then that would help us on the way to Mars and into deep space, because of course we wouldn't need to eat as much food if we were hibernating. So that'd be awesome, but we'll see how it goes.
That's very cool. So the Moustronauts sort of situation you were very excited about, I imagine?
Yeah, that was really cool. I would love to have mice in space that I could look after, but
Aw,
fingers crossed. We'll see.
that's so cute. I hear that mice make very good pets. Okay, so, and then there's the lab. Can we talk about where you work? Or should I not ask that at all?
Yeah, I guess so. So I'm at the University of Western Sydney,
Awesome.
and I'm studying. Well, I've done a Bachelor of Science, and now I'm doing my honours year, which is like a year-long research project. So I'm in the lab every now and then. Actually, I was in the lab yesterday, Saturday, till like 10 o'clock at night, because that's just what you do in science.
Totally. I should ask, do you drink a lot of coffee? Because otherwise you and I will be best friends forever.
I actually don't like coffee that much. I'm more of a tea person.
I will convert you. This is not a problem. In case of those of you who can't hear Ben yelling from the background, he's screaming about tea as well. So that's awesome. Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. All right, so I also want to address the t-shirts, because it seems to me that you have these really awesome, geeky, nerdy t-shirts, but you're always wearing the lab coat on top of them, and so we don't get a chance to see them. Have you yeah? Is that a decision that you've made on the fly, or you just want to look way more professional than the rest of us and you've got the lab coat, so why not use it?
I think it's a bit of both. I like to wear the cool shirts because, like, I think they're cool and I feel cool when I wear them. Well, kind of geeky, I guess. But, I mean, I have to wear the lab coat because that's kind of like the rules. Although, to be honest, technically I'm not supposed to be filming in the lab anyway, so shh. But, yeah.
All right, so tell everybody about the space pods. Just don't tell everyone that she's in the actual lab. We'll just call that a green screen. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, totally.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see. I had one more question of me personally. Oh yes, the pictures of Robonaut. Tell me about the pictures of Robonaut, and you were very stealthy. That picture was clearly through some fencing going on there.
Yeah, so I saw Robonaut in 2011 2010, when I was over there for the space school in Houston, and we actually got like a VIP tour, like our school got a VIP tour around Johnson Space Center, and so we got to see like some like mock-up habitats that they were kind of thinking of building for like the moon or Mars. This is back when like Constellation program was still going, I think. So
yes, Constellation.
yeah, so we saw that, and then we got to like walk past this room, and the tour guide was like, "Oh, by the way, like Robonaut like is in that room." But like we're walking really fast, and I was like, "No, I've got to get a picture of this. Like I just have to." So I'm like standing there, like there's this door with like this grating over it, and there's this small window, and I like go up to the window. I'm like, "Oh, quick, take a photo," and then had to run away because tour guide might have got mad at me or something. So. But it's really awesome.
Oh, I love it. That's so amazing. I can't tell you how many times Ben and I have been different places, particularly we were never able to get into a NASA tweet up or NASA social necessarily, but we were fortunate enough to go down, like, for instance, for STS-135 and able to sort of mill around the media site and same kind of thing. Like you'd pass something and go, this is so cool. Can we take a picture? I don't know, but quick, take a picture quick before they, throw us out or something. So I love those kinds of things. And those are the best memories too, right? Like that's one of those things that you just sort of cherish now. Yeah,
for sure.
I love it. Okay, so we definitely have some questions coming in from the chat room, some of which are coming from Ben Credible that I'm going to completely throw out because not appropriate. But Ben Credible does want to know for sure, what is your favorite orbiter if you have one?
Oh, Atlantis. It has to be because I saw her take off. Atlantis is awesome.
Atlantis is, obviously very near and dear to our hearts here, and also the official answer of tomorrow. So that was good. I'm glad you, I'm glad you got that one. Somebody called the victim of tomorrow, which I appreciate you guys throwing that already back in my face. Asked if you were in the tweet up for. Says, was Lisa in the tweet up? I imagine they're asking if you were in the tweet up for STS-135.
No, I don't think I had Twitter back then. I've only
Gotcha.
recently been on Twitter, so yeah, no, I wasn't.
So, so live question coming from my peanut gallery over here. Ben Credible is asking. So, how'd you get into 135?
How did I get there?
Yeah,
Oh, there's a
well,
funny
I mean, if
story.
you were there to watch Atlantis launch, right?
Yeah.
So you just went on your own accord. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, there's a good story to this. So I
Okay,
was
yay.
just barely 18, and I had spent like 6 hours a few months before from like 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. like clicking refresh about 100 times per hour, or maybe even more, like 1,000 times per hour, trying to get tickets to actually be able to go and watch STS 135 take off. So it took about 6 hours of clicking refresh. Then I got some tickets. Then I flew over to America by myself, and I'd never like traveled outside Australia before this, and went to Kennedy Space Center and saw Atlantis take off. And I kind of missed it too, because just as the countdown was like 10 seconds, 9 seconds, I like wiped my eye and I just put sunscreen on. So I had sunscreen in my eye,
Oh
and the
no!
shuttle is taking off and I'm like, I can't see it. And yes, I missed half of it, which is pretty terrible. But hey, once in a lifetime opportunity.
I suppose at least you could say you were there. You can't
Yeah.
necessarily say that you saw it. But there's always replays, though. It's okay. It's kind of like the same
Yeah.
thing. Oh goodness, that's hilarious. How long of a flight is that for you then?
15 hours or something, maybe
So
more.
you spent 6 hours in the computer, 15 hours on a plane. It's like another hour drive just to get there. And then who knows how many hours you were there before you actually didn't see it take off. So you were
Yeah.
pretty sleep deprived at the time. So really, it could have been anything and you would have just been excited to see it.
Yeah, I think so.
I love it. That's amazing. That's awesome. Okay, so Ben Credible also asked in our chat room, what kind of science in general do you enjoy?
Well, biology, I guess, is my favorite kind of science. I love learning about like how um, cells work, how they interact, and animals are pretty cool too. So I like learning about animals. That's why I picked my project to be on mice, because then I actually got to kind of have 50 pets for like a year. So
Right. Oh, I love it.
mice are pretty awesome.
That's so cute. I didn't want to Wicked, but your last comments kind of lead into this question. So I'm going to give fair game to Wicked. Asks, do you think space launch services are discriminating against Aussies for never using kangaroos, koalas, wallabies for any of their payload capability approximations?
I don't even really know what that question means, but yeah.
Well, I think he's kind of going towards the. A lot of times they say, well, this is the approximate weight of. I can't think of anything good. I was going to say a bread box, or a lot of times they compare the International Space Station to a football field, and of course NASA is based in America, so they mean an American football field, and so I think that's kind of where he was going with that one.
I guess in a way, Australia doesn't really deserve that because we don't have a space agency. So like until we get a space agency, no one's going to use kangaroos or wombats to like measure weights and things.
As soon as you do, though, that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Actually, you mentioned something a little bit earlier that I sort of glossed over, so I apologize. I want to go back to it. You were saying something about how you were picked for an Australian space school. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that is and how one gets picked for such a thing?
So the Australian International Space School is like it's run over a weekend, so from like a Friday to a Monday, and basically kids from all different schools. You have to apply, so it's just like you fill in a form. You get your like science teacher to endorse you and say, yeah, this kid's good at science. You should pick her. And so they picked me, and you go there, and it's like a weekend where they get different people to give like talks or lectures about some sort of space related topic. And you also go around and see some cool space related things. Like when I went, it was in Sydney, Australia. So we went to the Sydney Observatory, and oh, well, that's really the only space thing in Sydney. But they have gone to other places, such as like the Parkes telescope, which was used to in the Apollo 11 moon landing.
Nice.
So that's a radio telescope. And yeah, so they take the kids around to different cool space related things, and cool people come and talk to us and inspire us to be interested in space. So that's really awesome.
That's really cool. So you've got that's just fascinates me that you guys have this sort of space school, but there is no space program in Australia.
Yeah.
And neither in New Zealand either, is that correct?
I don't think New Zealand has. I think they do have some sort of space center or like something to do with their government. So I
Yeah.
know they're ahead of us, but I don't know how much.
It's because there's only 10 people there, so they all just kind of get together and just agree on things, and it's fine. Don't worry about it. That's
And they have rocket labs too, like building the Electron
Oh, yeah.
rocket. So
That's true. That's true. All right. Well, so I'm just going to put this on your shoulders now. This is a total Ben Credible move. I'm just going to completely put this on your shoulders that you are going to now single-handedly create the space industry in all of Australia, okay?
oh yeah, I could totally do that. I want to do that. Go Australia! We need someone to like get in there and motivate everyone to be interested in this.
I nominate you on behalf of Tomorrow to be the Australian cheerleader for the entire Australian Space Government Agency.
That'd be good because I used to be a cheerleader.
I love it. That is the best answer you possibly could have given to that one. So we have a couple people who are interested in your studies. Like, where did you start your studies? Where did you get your degree, et cetera, et cetera, if you are comfortable talking about that.
Yeah, so I've been at the University of Western Sydney for the whole time. That's where I got my bachelor degree. And I guess I went into science because it was the thing that I was really good at high school. I would be the person that people would come to in class and be like, hey, I don't really understand, but like the teacher didn't really help me learn it. So can you explain it? So I kind of had this role as the backup teacher in all my classes, which was fun. I don't mind because I like teaching people. But yeah, so I went into science and I did my bachelor degree. And I guess all the information out there that when I've talked to other astronauts about like, I want to be an astronaut, but I'm from Australia. What can I do? And they're like, just study and become really good at something. Just specialize in something that you can say that you're the best at that. So that's what I did. I was like, all right, I like science. I'm going to do that. I'm going to specialize in that, and hopefully that will help me. Like, if somehow I get the chance to be an astronaut. So yeah, that's what I did, and I'm trying to study mice to see how they hibernate, and I want to take that into humans one day. So hopefully I can help humans to travel space.
Very cool. Oh, I love it. That's very, very cool. And there's a question that came in from the chat room that I guess we probably haven't ever explained to anyone. As far as anybody here, citizens of tomorrow, are concerned, you just suddenly popped up and we're doing space pods. So somebody asks, how did you get involved with tomorrow? Do you want to go into that story?
Yeah, so Ben actually sent out a tweet and asking whether like any females wanted to have a job like presenting space pods, and I was like, well, hell yeah. So I didn't really think that I had the experience to do it because I didn't have any experience really. None. So yeah, and he asked me to like just send in a demo. So like I got in my lounge room, I got my camera out, and I stood in front of my wall, and I was like, hey, like there's this cool event where like you can send your tweets to this cosmonaut, like the first cosmonaut to do a spacewalk, and he'll answer them, and you guys should do it because it's awesome. And 50 years ago we did spacewalking, woohoo! And it was just a demo, and then you guys were like, hey, you want to like post this online? And I was like, all right. And that's how it started.
That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's pretty much exactly how I would describe how that started. We made a call, you answered, and while you may not have had any experience to start, neither did we. And that's sort of the entire point of the whole thing, right? That you just have to be willing to do it and able to do it. And other than that, like it'll get better. And like I said earlier, I binge watched all of your pods, and as you continue to do them, you're getting more and more comfortable on camera. And as you continue to do them, you're getting more confident in what you're saying and what you're talking about. You're making much better eye contact with the camera, etc. And you're doing a really great job. And we appreciate all of your effort in every single way, because it's a lot of time and a lot of effort that Ben and I don't have to spend doing it. And you're doing a really great job. And you're a strong female in the STEM industry, which is just really amazing, and we love that.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to kind of try and be a role model for other girls that are thinking, yeah, I love space, but I don't really see that many female astronauts out there, and I just want to be like, you can do it. Just keep trying, keep studying, you'll be great.
It's perfect. I love it. Thank you, Lisa, so much for letting us have this time with you. Get to know you a little bit better. You get to know us a little bit better. And can't wait for more space pods coming out from you.
Yeah, I've got plenty more in the bag of what I want to talk about, so it should be great.
Perfect. Yay. Oh, I'm so excited. All right. Well, that just about does it for this. When we come back, I will have Benjamin James with me, and we will be doing some space news. Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.
Look into her face, determination in her eyes. She won't give up or quit or fall for little fashion lies. Filled with awesome expectation, this girl's a fascination. And nothing in her way will keep her from her destination. Cause she's fire walking, she's fire walking. When it's hot, she keeps on moving. Through the heat, keeps on improving. Yeah, she's fire walking, she's fire walking to be free.
And welcome back to Tomorrow. And now that we're back in the Pacific time zone, so I don't know if you mentioned this in the show, ironically, we were bouncing between two time zones. So Lisa was in
We were
Sunday.
bouncing between 2 days.
2 days, right? Lisa was in Sunday, and we were in Saturday when that
Yep.
was happening based on the two time zones. So welcome back to Tomorrow.
Today.
Before we get started, I did want to give a huge shout out to all of the patrons of Tomorrow who have helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are the people who have contributed $5 or more to this specific episode. They've also, if you look on that list, there might be a few duplicate names. That's because there are people who have contributed to our Space Pod campaign as well over at patreon.com/spacepod. And one of the rewards is your producer for this show and that show. So for more information on how you can become a producer and citizen of Tomorrow, head on over to patreon.com/TMRO. We are a crowdfunded show. Every single dollar, every single penny helps. All right, let's go ahead and get started. We brought Space Mike back in the mix this week, and he's going to be talking about some epic stuff that happened very, very quickly down in Cape Canaveral. Space Mike, take it away.
Oh man, so this week SpaceX was able to do the Pad Abort test, and it was awesome. Like you said, very short. I mean, the whole thing was over in, it felt like the entire thing was over in like a minute and a half, 2 minutes long. So the burn only lasted a few seconds, and it reached a maximum speed of 345 miles per hour. And with that, once it was able to reach, well here, watch this video. Awesome.
50 meters per second. Slightly below nominal.
So during this launch, when it reached its highest point, or apogee, it separated from the trunk section, and that was a beautiful shot there. That was a beautiful shot there of that. And the drogue parachutes and eventually the main parachutes deployed, and it came to a nice soft splashdown into the ocean not far from the launch site. So that was very cool. And they did have a dummy on board that was equipped with sensors that monitored what the environment was like inside of the capsule during this launch. And according to some of the initial tweets that Elon and SpaceX put out, everything was just fine. And they did, you know, get around like, I think it was around 3 Gs of acceleration, but otherwise everything was completely safe. And if humans had been on board, they would have been completely safe for this Pad Abort test. So next, after this, they're going to be doing an in-flight abort test. And now that we know that the Super Dracos will work and get to a nice, good speed and be able to pitch so that the angle of its ballistic trajectory is good, so that it'll make a nice splashdown somewhere or landing somewhere in the future, maybe. But something that's interesting for the in-flight abort test is the booster for that is actually similar to the Falcon 9R Dev 1 vehicle, the ones that they were doing the Hopper tests with. Not the Grasshopper, because that one's retired, but the Falcon 9R Dev 1 had 3 engines on the bottom of this instead of 9 engines. So that's what they're going to be planning on using, and it's also going to be launching from Vandenberg. So that's going to be pretty interesting. And as far as the pictures that I saw, the latest pictures of that booster, when they did a tank test of it, it did not feature any landing legs. So they probably aren't planning to recover that booster. So in any case, this was a very successful test, and I'm looking forward to all of the crazy other things that SpaceX is planning to do this year. But speaking of rocket tests, Benjamin, you have something really cool to tell us about.
I do. How about a long-duration rocket test? Check this out. The ISRO, which is the Indian Space Research Organization, is testing a new vehicle for the GSLV, which is the Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle. This is a cryogenic engine. Now, check this. I'm going to stop talking for a second.
What?
All right, now you see it firing, and now you can't see it. It is, in fact, still firing. That is a liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen engine, and this ran for 635 seconds. It ran beautifully, exactly as expected. They've actually run a series of tests before, cold start tests. They've run some shorter duration burns, but this is a longer duration burn on a cryogenic engine. Now, cryogenic engines are very, very hard to work with because these supercooled fuels and oxidizers, they really want to escape. The particles are so small, they just want to leave, and they're hard to contain, and being able to successfully fire an engine for this long is a great achievement in and of itself. And it's a step further towards GSLV, the Geosynchronous Satellite Launch Vehicle Mark III, which again, Mark III sounds way cooler than V3. I'm just going to say Mark III sounds awesome. So congratulations to the ISRO on that. That was a successful test. It looked really awesome. Although, like I said, really hard to see because when it makes that flame, actually we had the same issue on the space shuttle.
Yeah.
When the space shuttle main engines would fire, you would kind of see fire for a second. You would actually then see what's called a mock diamond underneath the engine, but if you look directly above it, you wouldn't see anything. And that mock diamond was caused by inefficiencies. You were actually at sea level, the engine wasn't as efficient as it should have been, and as it extended, that mock diamond would actually kind of slowly disappear, at which point you wouldn't be able to see anything coming off the engine. You shouldn't be able to unless there was something in the way.
Right.
You wouldn't see anything, and then it would actually start to overexpand, and off you go. So fun little factoid. Same concepts on this engine. Moving right along, send it over to Carrie Ann.
Speaking of long duration,
Oh, bingo!
Ah?
Wow, look at that. We're actually trying to transition something.
terribly, but
Lord.
that's as much as I got.
A little bit.
The Messenger probe ends its mission and dives into Mercury.
Dive.
What a terrible headline that is. The Messenger probe was on it was actually on a 1-year mission. It was designed for a 1-year mission, and it lasted 4 years. And then at the very end here, on Thursday, May 7th, it ended in a spectacular crash. This is the first probe ever to orbit Mercury. And while it was doing so, it confirmed the existence of water ice buried underneath the polar craters that are permanently in darkness. It launched in August of 2004. Again, like I said, designed for 1 and lasted for 4, which is amazing. It crashed down on Thursday, 3:26 p.m. EDT, which is 1926 GMT, or
Really? Greenwich Mean Time? Really?
I copied and pasted that one
Minus
quickly.
2
I'm
points
so
for
sorry.
that.
I'm
Greenwich Mean
so
Time.
sorry. At 8,750 miles per hour into the planet's northern hemisphere, which unfortunately is out of the view of Earth, it is said to approximately mate a 50-foot wide brand new crater. When do we get to name that one the Messenger crater? Because that would be freaking awesome. And the Bepi di Colombo spacecraft built by Europe and Japan will look for Messenger's impact scar after its scheduled arrival at Mercury in 2024.
Greenwich Mean Time.
Well, it could have been in 2024. 2024, sorry. So, you're welcome. I know. I'm sorry. I copied and pasted very quickly.
Mike, take us out of that.
Before he hurts
Mike,
me.
what have you got going?
Speaking of things that made an impact, thankfully
Yes!
this one didn't make a crater.
Yes, thank you.
Oh my goodness. Oh man.
The show is spinning out of control, Mike. We're spinning out of control.
All right, let's focus. Space stop. So to give a little back history, the Russians launched a Progress vessel to send cargo and astronaut supplies up to the International Space Station. There was a problem with the third stage, possibly when it was separating from the Progress vehicle, and the Progress vehicle, they weren't able to get telemetry from it. There were some antennas that didn't deploy, especially the Kerr's docking antenna. antenna, which is necessary in order to make automated dockings to the space station. And the vessel started spinning wildly out of control. It used up all of its propellant, and they essentially said, there's nothing we can do, so we're just going to allow the spacecraft to burn up in the atmosphere. Here's the video that they were able to get from an onboard camera of it spinning in Earth orbit. And thankfully, it has re-entered the atmosphere. They weren't sure where it was going to re-enter the atmosphere, but thankfully, it re-entered over the Pacific Ocean, and all of the parts that would survive re-entry thankfully just splashed into the ocean, and thankfully did not cause any damage over any habited areas anywhere. So we can be grateful for that. But until Russia figures out why this failure occurred and what the problems was, whether if it was from the upper stage engine or if it was something from the decoupler or the Progress vessel itself. In any case, they're not going to launch another Progress vessel with more supplies until after they're able to do a full investigation and figure out what the problem was and fix those problems. And they also might push back the launch of a Soyuz capsule to send more people up to the space station and allow some of the crew that have been up there that are almost through with their 6-month stay there to return back home. So if there is any commonality between the issues between these two very similar but different spacecraft, they're not going to be sending any humans up there. And if this problem persists for a long time, it could put the entire space station in jeopardy of being decrewed. And we definitely don't want that to happen, but I'm sure that they're going to be doing the best that they can to figure out what the problems are. And at least as far as cargo is concerned, we do have the other partners. Japan still has their HTV vehicle. ATV is retired. That was the European Space Agency. And we also have, of course, SpaceX Dragon. And even though Orbital Sciences had a failure last year of their Antares rocket, they are going to be launching a new Cygnus capsule with supplies on an Atlas V rocket. That's tentatively scheduled for November of this year. So even though they don't have the Antares ready to fly yet, they will be fulfilling their contract to send cargo up. So at least in that regard, there's no danger there. But we're just going to have to see how things pan out from here. But speaking of how things are going to be going for the commercial space industry, let me turn it back to you, Ben.
That was a terrible, terrible transition as well. This is the show of terrible transitions.
Yes.
From one to the other. All right. So yeah, our final news segment is that the commercial spaceflight learning period, this is a period in which the FAA can't really create new harsh rules on upcoming tourist space. Because the reason behind this is that we don't know what we don't know yet, right? And if we create too many safety rules, we're going to kill the industry before it can ever begin.
Right.
So we need to give them a little bit of leverage and say, okay, you go do your thing. But the FAA kind of says, you go do your thing in these remote areas. We have to make sure that I forgot how they worded it, it's like an innocent bystander, non-participating bystander doesn't get hurt.
Sure.
So the idea being, you can go test out in the middle of the desert, but you can't test out in the middle of Los Angeles. Go and do what you need to do, but we're not going to tell you you need to, use this kind of landing gear or this kind of whatever.
Awesome.
You figure your stuff out. Well, that was due to expire on September 30th of this year of 2015 or 2015. Another one of those shows. So it's due to expire this year, and there is a bill being pushed through the U.S. Commercial Space Launch Competitiveness Act bill by Senator Ted Cruz. He's a Republican from Texas. And that bill will push it back an additional 5 years until about 2020. So that gives the commercial space industry a chance to kind of really get this stuff going and figuring out what they need to do. This is not the first time it's been pushed back, by the way. These limits were first put in place in 2004, and then they were extended for 3 years in 2012. So that is, this will be the second extension of all this. Now, the FAA is not super keen on that. They're kind of like, yeah, we need to start putting some regulation in place here.
Right.
So whether both sides have a good valid point, but this is a brand new industry, so I think I like the concept of innocent non-participating bystander. Non-participating bystander makes sense.
Yeah.
Do these things out in the middle of the desert. I would actually even argue not necessarily Mojave, but closer to like Spaceport America, where you're really truly like in restricted airspace, restricted
because
everything.
of white sands.
Yeah, absolutely. Test these things, figure it out, and then from there, 'cause, part of the argument of the FAA is we've had 50 years of human spaceflight experience, and the commercial space industry is going, well, yeah, on things like a Soyuz capsule or and that's not what we're doing here.
Yeah,
we're building space planes, nothing like the space shuttle.
Right, experimental planes.
We're building experimental planes that have to do completely different things with they're doing totally different stuff. So. Again, there are pros and cons to both sides of it, but this is a bill that may be going through, and we'll see how that goes. And there you go. So that's our space news. I don't really have a good segue into segue. That was the word I was looking for. We were segueing. I don't have a good segue into the commercial break. So go. And welcome back to Tomorrow. Now, before we get started with comments from last week's episode, I'd like to give a huge shout out to all the patrons of Tomorrow who've helped to make this specific segment of this episode happen. These are the people who've contributed at least $2.50 to this specific episode. You can find more information over at the Patreon channel, but oh wait, there is more. If you've contributed even as little as one penny gets your name in the show. And these are our Patreon subscribers. You can find out more information on how you can help crowdfund this show over at patreon.com/TMRO. Again, crowdfunded show, every penny helps. All right, let's get started with comments from our last show. Actually, this is more than just, I think, our last show. I think I found a few comments from all around the place, all over the place. So there you go. Go ahead.
All everywhere.
All everywhere.
Horn and Hoof Records.
I'm sorry, who are they? They're Horn Hoof Records?
Horn Hoof Records. That's what I said. Okay. Horn Hoof Records.
Horn and Hoof. That is hard to say. Horn and Hoof Records.
Says. Love the Sea Dragon episode. Maybe that is something Tomorrow can crowdfund.
Yeah, no. So maybe someday, my personal opinion of crowdfunding has changed radically over the last few years. Obviously, we're now a crowdfunded show. We don't do the advertising thing. We actually do a little bit of that, but it's so inconsequential as compared to the crowdfunding thing. However, Sea Dragon was billions with a capital B. And
B that rhymes with P that stands for pool.
That stands for pool. Okay. And got to get a little Music Man in there. I just don't. The largest crowdfunding campaigns to date are only millions and like ones of millions, not tens of millions, really. And we need billions, plural. So maybe someday.
Billions and billions.
$1 billion. Yeah, actually, it's like $8 billion.
Like
so, I'm not sure that will happen anytime soon. It sure would be cool, though. And someone else mentioned in a comment that, rather than just rewards, you should get a stake in the company. I think that'd be great, actually. Wouldn't that be cool? A space startup where the rewards are basically your stake in the company. Mm-hmm. So when the company's ready to go public, that's how much stock you have.
Right.
Right? So it's actually everyone is vested in the company succeeding.
Yeah.
And you have a reason, as you're doing better and cooler things, you have a reason to invest more in it.
Sure.
And so that's an interesting. You're welcome, Internet. There you go. See if you can figure out how to go. All right.
That just happened.
Boom! Right here on the show.
Next comment comes from the Tabasco. Says
regular commenter. Thank you, Tabasco.
Frequent caller. When ISS mission is complete, why not park it at L1? We can learn exposure limits outside magnetosphere and no Earth return issues.
Getting the
Mike apparently really likes this one.
All right, Mike. I'll tell you why we won't. Tell me. All right, Mike. Why don't you go ahead and tell me why we will, assuming you think we will.
Well, I'm not assuming that we will, but I'm hoping that we will. That's what I would do if I was administrator. I would be rallying and shaking my fist as much as possible to get us to save the thing. I mean, even if crews never visit it again, we need to keep that thing in orbit. Let's put it into a higher orbit. It doesn't even have to be that high, just, a couple more 100 kilometers higher up. send it to like 500-kilometer orbit
How
or
are
something
you getting
like
it?
that.
All right, this is my whole point. How are you getting it there? When we launched it, it doesn't have big, huge engines on it to move it into these higher orbits. That's the problem.
It doesn't need big engines. All we need to do is do a couple of large reboosts. And there's even talks of doing a lot of like ion engine tests at the space station. We could do it over a long period of time, as long as we don't get the orbit to degrade where it re-enters the atmosphere. I just don't want to have another Mir moment. I mean, I wasn't quite a full-on space geek at the time, but I was like 12 years old, heard that Mir had burned up in the atmosphere, and I cried. I was so depressed that day. I do not want that to happen again.
The key takeaway here is it cannot do it with the technology on board today. There is no long duration burn capability on the space station to bring it up to where you want to put it. If you want to do this, then we will have to retrofit the space station with stuff to make this happen. And I'm not even sure that an ion engine, slow burning, as close as it... Remember, it's still within our atmosphere right now. So you can't just kind of... ion engines generally work way out there, right? So you need a little bit more, I think, than an ion. Once you get a little higher up, you might be able to use one. I don't know. I'm not saying no. Anything's possible, but remember, you can't just go, yeah, let's just move it to L1. Joystick thing, hit the little red button, fire the drives, and steer it over to L1. Turn on the parking brake.
You can't even do like a strong burn with it too, because you don't want that thing to be oscillated. I mean, if those solar panels start to bend or anything like that because of how much thrust you're putting into the thing, then you are having a very bad day.
I think
you're going to have a very bad day.
So I do not believe it is impossible. I think it is far more difficult than simply turning on some engines and moving it to L1. There's a lot of planning and things that need to be attached to it to make that happen.
I agree, but I also think that this is probably a much more, this technical discussion is probably for people smarter than us. But the point that I wanted to make is that the ISS is the 8th wonder of the world, and we shouldn't just destroy it. We should keep it there forever, even if just to look at. That's my opinion.
Even if just to look at. All right, so I think that is a good debate for a future show, and I think you and I should debate that on a future show. All right, let's move on.
Yes, I am up for that.
All right, let's move along. All right, next up.
The next one comes from Grumpy Space on Twitter, saying,
Man,
hey,
I'm kind of grumpy about ISS, aren't I? Normally I'm like, yay, space, and then ISS is something I'm like, send it into the ocean. Keep going.
comes from Grumpy Space,
Sorry.
saying, hey, Dutta, where'd you get that cool Moon First shirt?
Hey, Dutta, where'd you get that cool Moon First shirt?
Dutta's pressing buttons.
Pushing buttons and stuffy things and stuff. And
Almost there.
Button,
There's
almost
button.
there, ready, almost
Wow,
ready.
this takes a really long time.
There you
Super
go.
Hi. Eric Franks, if you follow Eric, I have to look, oh man, I'm so unprepared.
I told you this was happening. This show.
Can we blame Lisa?
Yes, Lisa's fault.
She was nervous enough as it was.
I know, poor thing. No, she did great. It was awesome.
If you look for Eric J. Franks on Twitter, he can hook you up with a link or an address to be able to have one made for you, so you can have your own Moon First shirt.
There you go. Moving along.
Next comment comes from YouTube.
Dutta.
It comes from Raftaman.
This is why we don't let him. This is why we can't have nice things.
Really? I'm why?
No.
No, actually, you are the nice
He's
thing.
not.
That's if it makes you feel any
Move
better.
on.
This comes from Raftaman on YouTube saying, concerning women in STEM, which of course again is science, technology, engineering, and math.
Thank you for following the no acronym rule.
No problem. NASA's 2013 class of astronauts, NASA astronaut group 21, is exactly 50-50. 4 guys, 4 women. I imagine that would be 4 men, 4 women. But, we'll let it slide this time. Guess that's a start.
Yes.
Yep.
It is a start.
Total start.
This comes from the whole shifting, you just need to wait a little bit more time. There was kind of a culture difference before with letting, anything other than white males in these industries.
Right.
And we're seeing that shift. It's just going to take some time, but it looks to me like the shift is happening, and I hope that is correct. And that is a great first start, 2013 astronaut class being 50-50, which is about where it should be, right? That's approximately the worldwide gender gap. I don't know what to call that. It's about 50-50 worldwide, and so that's what you would expect pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right, moving right along.
Awesome. This one comes from McKeel's 1992, also from YouTube. OMG! Imagine having a 500-ton telescope in orbit. That's how much the ISS weighs. You could launch the entire ISS in one launch.
Yeah. Well, and we kind of remember we did that essentially with with
Wow.
Skylab.
Skylab.
It was basically a giant space station that we launched all at once, and it was pretty freaking awesome. It had issues, but it was pretty freaking awesome. So, and there was some debate. Actually, it was really amazing. There was some debate on YouTube. Like, people really did not like that episode, saying that this was a fanciful concept that never should have gotten the airtime that it got. And I think a lot of people are assuming that this is an idea that doesn't have a solid science foundation.
Right.
Or they're assuming that you have to use a lot of the technologies we're using today, which are these really thin, really thin tanks that's just not going to survive. And that's not what Sea Dragon is at all. First off, it was developed by some of the same NASA scientists that developed the Saturn V. It was competition to the Saturn V. It is a big dumb booster, so it's just a different mentality. But there were studies done on it. It's doable. It's a real thing that would happen. It's just that it's much heavier, right? You use much thicker metals. It's essentially a submarine. You build a submarine and you put a really giant rocket engine on it. I'm oversimplifying that, but you build a submarine, you put a rocket engine on it. They did a ton of studies. They actually did some drop tests. They built some actual hardware. This was a real thing, an actual real thing, and it still could be today. A big dumb booster is kind of the concept. And just because it's not what we have done in the past doesn't mean that what we're doing right now is the right thing. It could be something we could do in the future.
Right.
There is something to be said for the big dumb booster. There's simplicity in it. You can launch a lot of stuff all at once. I mean, just because it's different doesn't mean that it's wrong. So yeah, there you go. It's scientifically sound. There were tests done. It's a fairly real vehicle. We just need to decide to build it if we want to. Launching it out at ocean, though, that would have been probably okay in the 60s, right? Because we didn't care as much. Not really going to be a thing now.
Yeah.
We're not going to be okay with disrupting the ecosystem like that. So we'd have to build, like, I think Vax Emery in the chat room said, we'd have to build some sort of locking system where you kind of float it in and then it basically launches from a submerged land-based water system. That, I think, would actually be the most complicated part of that. Anyhow, there you go. Was that the last one? That was the last one.
That was the last one.
This was an interesting show.
It was.
Wait, Space Mike is waving his arms.
Uh-oh.
He's doing this. He's saying
things
words.
and we can't hear him.
We can't hear him.
Oh, no.
I'm not sure. We don't have to unmute him. Okay, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Sad.
If it gives any credibility to the whole Sea Dragon idea, the Russians have converted some of their ICBMs that they launched from submarines, have converted some of those into satellite launchers. And even just in recent years, they have launched a couple, very small satellites, but they have launched some satellites where the first part of its flight started off underwater. So, it is feasible. That was, of course, much smaller scale, and it was, starting off with a rocket. Talking about a submarine that becomes a rocket is completely different, but
It's not
it's totally feasible.
It's not a submarine that becomes a rocket. I mean, that's
Right.
kind of a really bad way. But it's today's rockets, when you look at them, they're very, very thin. Like the shell, the tankage is very, very thin. Sea Dragon would not be. Sea Dragon just empty would be freaking heavy. I mean, it would be. It gives up. Today's rockets are all about efficiency, right? Efficiency in the engine, efficiency in weight, efficiency in everything.
Right.
Sea Dragon is the opposite of that. It is about inefficiency. It is the super inefficient rocket. It is very heavy. It doesn't have turbo pumps. The engine's ISP is terrible. It's super, super, super inefficient. But it's got so much power. It is so incredibly powerful. It doesn't matter. Right? You get rid of the problem of inefficiency through the power of the rocket. So anyhow, there you go. That's why we spent so much time on it, because it's an interesting, different way of looking at something.
Wasn't there a quote somewhere along the line of there's fast, efficient, and cheap?
Pick any two.
Pick any two, yeah. That you're never going to get all three.
Yeah, this would be fast and cheap.
There you go.
All right.
Good, fast, or cheap. Pick two.
There you go. Good,
This
fast,
would
and
be
cheap.
good and cheap. Well, it'd be. I don't know. All right, on that. All right, I was going to say we're going to take a quick break. We're done with the show. We are done with this show. I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching. After Dark is up next. If you're a Patreon Plus subscriber or above, you'll have immediate access to After Dark as soon as we post it on demand. Otherwise, everyone else, that'll be available in about 4 weeks. We will have a live show next week, but the following week, we will have no live show due to a scheduling conflict. All right, on that note, I'd like to thank everyone so much for watching, and we'll see you in a week.